Hi, I'm Sarah Carpenter, the Executive Director at the Memphis Left. You are listening to Funky Politics.
Welcome back to Funky Politics. As promised, I always make a promise, Doc. DC here,
No,
got Tosha. I try. Some of those promises are not really good, but anyway, I try. Doc, you got that look on your face like you're bewildered.
No, I'm bored.
Whatever. Look, yo,
and that's what happens.
We've got let me tell you something. We got an exciting young man who's in Memphis and Shelby County, relocated back here to Memphis and Shelby County to help us out with a little bit of education on the side. Dr. Cedric Gray, the Director of Education with Shelby County Government. Welcome to.
Well, first of all, that's a new territory.
Well, it is.
That deserves some fanfare because he is Shelby County's first Director of Education.
Appointed by the new county mayor,
right.
And this is some forethought. I mean, he had to put a lot of thought into something like this.
Yes,
you know?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, welcome to the program, Dr. Gray.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Well,
I
don't want to belabor this thing. Tasha, you over there?
I want to know what brings you to the great work here in Memphis.
So it's a long story. I'll make short. Left Jackson, Mississippi as superintendent, and connected with one of my heroes, Dr. Carol R. Johnson, who at the time was regional executive director for New Leaders for New Schools. And she said, guess what? I've got an opening for you. And so I said, yes, ma'am, I'll jump right on it. And I began at that point to train school superintendents and school leaders on instructional practices and instructional leadership. I was clocking in on Mondays at Memphis International Airport and clocking out on Thursday afternoons. I was gone most of the time.
Wow.
So I was not able to really connect to the community like I'd like to.
Right.
I felt like I was training everybody else folk and not helping my own. And then, just so happened, through lots of prayer and soul searching, this opportunity popped up. And honestly, I said, I don't know if, I've got some sense of humility. Yeah. And so I'm not sure, if I'm that guy, right? Maybe the mayor's looking for somebody who's got something different, something more. But sure enough, I got an email that said, you ought to look at this.
Wow.
Yes, and so I did. I've continued to stay in contact with Dr. Carol R. Johnson. She's my hero. Yeah. And she said, Cedric, don't pass this up. You wanted to come back home. You wanted to contribute to your community. And so here's your chance. And so
now the opportunity you had with Dr. Johnson with New Leaders and New Schools. Mm-hmm. Now you were traveling around the country training principals?
I was. As far west as West Covina, California. As far east as and southeast as Greensboro, North Carolina, Guilford County. So I had counts everywhere. Denver, Colorado, eastern Texas. There had 10 districts in East Texas, right? So
mercy.
Yes, and it was great work. Don't get me wrong. Yeah. But I just felt something was missing.
It's probably that flight, Doc, from Memphis to
all
those different cities.
And honestly, the one person who's most excited about me finding my work at home
probably was your wife.
Was my daughter, then my wife, right?
Oh, wow.
So she was like, "Oh, Daddy, I'm so glad to have you back." So, but I'm grateful for it. I mean, it really is.
It's good to have you back in Memphis.
It's good to be back.
Back in the western part of Tennessee,
the Bluff City,
part of the Grand Division.
That's it.
Director of Education.
So I'm curious to know what I was about to say. I think Doc's about that same question. I was about that.
Okay, well let's do it like
what does it do? What does your job do?
Well, see, so so it is, the concept. You understand the concept was, I think, developed from during the mayoral campaign when David Lenore, I think, was positing it as an idea, and Mayor Lee Harris captured that idea and inserted it into his staff as a way to be the communication between and among the 7 school districts in our county.
Sure.
So we have 7 districts. What we also know is that rarely do they come together to talk.
They don't talk.
Right.
Never.
Right. So part of the mayor's charge was, I'd like for you to do that. I'd like for you to grab the best ideas across the county, put them in a space, almost curating them, right? And so and then sharing that. So, and using that as we guide policy and legislation. I am excited to announce, though, I've met with all 7 on 2 occasions. So we have quarterly meetings set up now. It's really kind of cool. And
you're the first person to ever do that in the history of Memphis.
I feel like a Nobel Peace Prize is in order.
I don't know that I deserve all that.
Is this the first time that all the superintendents
more like a Harris
together?
Peace Prize?
Well, I would. First of all, I don't know for sure, but I would say since the demerger, I don't know that they all got together formally.
Right.
Wow.
I know that they are colleagues through
and probably some meetings.
Right. And so there's a West Tennessee sort of thing that happens with superintendents as well. Yeah. But the 7 in this county had not, as far as I know. So,
good.
You should see us in the room.
Right.
They're excited about being with each other, excited about talking, swapping stories, and those kinds of things. But
are there any girls in that room?
There is a girl.
Okay.
Tammy Mason is superintendent in Arlington.
Okay.
But it sounds like you're saying everybody's happy to be together. It sounds like you have people that were there that wanted to meet, but something was keeping them from meeting. So what is that something that was keeping them from meeting?
I heard Sister Sarah Carpenter say that sometimes the churches aren't asked.
Right.
Them, and so sometimes you just got to ask.
Okay.
And so I know them. My work in Fayette County as superintendent, I get to know John and David and Jason Manuel from Germantown. I know these people. So it really was a couple of phone calls. Y'all mind? I'm new in this role. Y'all mind getting together and talking to me?
So you saying you did it?
I'm just saying.
Nobel Peace Prize is in order. I keep trying to tell y'all.
You basically saying it was me.
Look.
That's what you doing. It was me.
That's funky politics. You tell it like it is.
Okay, well, let me just say this. This is with humility and respect.
So I couldn't have just called them up. You don't think they would have just called them?
You could. You could do that.
They would have just called me.
You could do that. I really think a couple of things happen. I really think this. Now, this is maybe I lean on optimism a little bit more. There's some reality that takes place too. Now, there's no sugarcoating the real stuff. But I really think that just as superintendent in that role, they really wanted to say, hey, we are in this thing together. So we want, and my goal is to have a quality education for all school-age citizens in our county. Right? And it's good in some spaces and not good in others. And don't get it twisted. It ain't good everywhere outside of the city limits.
That's right. You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network. One thing how many students do we have countywide? Is there a ballpark number that's not only under our district, but all the other 6 districts?
About 174,000.
174,000.
7 school districts.
See, now I got the answer. I had a conversation. I said, Memphis, we are the 11th largest district. Someone said, no, we're not. We're number 23. I said, somehow we are about 11. And that is how, because when we add all the other counties. Now, one thing I see, you said the 7 was the Achievement School District Superintendent in that conversation.
She and I have met. Dr. Sharon Griffin and I were principals together.
Okay.
And so I met separately with her because I was onboarding, right? Okay. And so, yes, she's not in that meeting. But when you bring it up, shame on me.
I was about to say, if you can get her in the meeting, and everybody don't fight her, I'm gonna give you Nobel Peace Prize for real.
Right.
I'm writing to Poland now.
Sharon Griffin quite well. But so I'm derelict. So I'm hearing it, right? And so she gets the text message when I leave here that says, "Hey, Sharon, I need you. I'd love to have you at the next space."
And what's funny about you're gonna offer his name up to the folks in Poland. I did, the president. I sent. I did send him.
As we move it on, okay. so we know that you can get the people in the room, but is that the primary role of your position, or do you have a much more substantive thing other than
that's
just
substantive?
I know it is, but once everybody here's what I'm saying. Once everybody starts talking,
that's right.
That's that.
Yeah.
Check. Do next thing.
Yep.
What are some of the other? Because I know you got a much more substantive agenda of things.
Right. So, and I'm glad you said that because so this role is different for me in that there is some policy and legislation implications that I'm learning as we go. So the first thing we're pushing, and the mayor Mayor Lee Harris has championed, is needs-based universal pre-K. Right?
Speak on
Yeah,
it.
so there are four. So can we break this down a little
Sure.
bit? There are 12,000 4-year-olds in the Shelby County, right? Currently, 6,500 of them are receiving needs-based pre-K. Okay. All right. So we want to increase that number. There's some funding formula. We want to increase that number to 7,500 next year, and then 8,500 at the end of 2 years, which means 8,500 out of 12,000 will receive needs-based universal pre-K. There are, if you're doing the math, 8,500, 12,000, there's some that's not calculated in that because they're not in needs-based.
Well, I was going to say, how many of the needs-based that need it are getting it right now?
There you go. And so that's part of what we want to provide.
Okay.
And the county-wide approach is, what does good 4-year-old school look like? Not just where I sit and live, right? But where does it look like in the four corners of the county? That's where coming together, those are kinds of things that inform policy.
So you got 6,500 kids that are getting that right now.
Yes.
How many are not getting it?
So if they're,
I mean, how many are not?
12,000.
yeah,
out of 12.
So I would say
But all the 12,000 doesn't
Out
need
of
it.
12,000 4-year-olds.
Yeah,
Yeah,
6,500.
how many are needs-based?
So that
Not
leaves
getting
us with 5,500. But all that 5,500 they don't need it.
right, about I would approximate about 3,000 of them are not needs based. And what I mean by that is that they can afford to do what they need to do for their 4-year-old without assistance from anyone else.
So that's going to leave you with about 2,000 that need it and aren't getting it.
That's correct.
And the total is, out of 12,000 4-year-olds, you've got 8,500 kids in this area that are in need of needs-based education.
Yes.
4-year-olds.
Yes.
Well, now hold on. Now I'm going to have to go back to the Vanderbilt study, and
Yes, sir.
you're a
Hit
policy guy. You're
Hit
a
it.
policy guy now.
Yes, sir.
Tosha, you're education policy person now. If the Vanderbilt study says that my little person doesn't go to its pre-K program, right, and he sits at home with me or whomever, and this other young person is in there, they catch up by what grade, Tosha?
3rd grade. But
So hold on.
here's what happens.
They catch up by 3rd grade. So does the end justify the means? I mean, I hear what you're saying, but you've got those people out there that say, look, are we chasing a rabbit down a hole on this one right
That's
here?
people
right?
who can afford good quality preschool.
There it
Because
is.
them
I
other
just asked the
2,000,
question.
we don't never catch up to them.
There it
Ever.
is. There it
Ever.
is.
I
in
just
life.
asked a simple
Right. And
question
what's-
that I think needed to be asked
Yeah.
because you've got those folks that said the Vanderbilt study's out there.
Right. The Vanderbilt study is out there, and they say that by the time these pre-K providers provide pre-K education for 4-year girls, when they get to 3rd grade, their education, for the most part, performance starts to slip. What I don't think they take in consideration is the quality of instruction that's provided for students who get to kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade. When they get to 3rd grade, you still have to take a look at the quality of instruction that they are receiving. You have to take a look at the curriculum that varies, right? And then you have to take a look at socio-emotional and other factors along those lines. Behavior issues, right. So I mean, okay. So in this city, after the research I did, now I could stand corrected, but I think I got this right. In this city, we're dealing with a poverty level for school-age children in the city of Memphis. One out of every 2 children, right, are living in poverty.
That's 50%.
Right, and so in Shelby County, 1 out of every 3. So it's about 30%, right? And so along with that poverty level, this is the studies that I've read, also comes a level of stress and adverse childhood experiences, right? So and so what Vanderbilt did not take into account is those adverse childhood experiences that exist, along with the education that has to be provided, along with the quality of teachers and curriculum. So I'm pushing against just because I'm a teacher and I love this work. I'm pushing against that just a little because I think we have to put all of that in context, in the context of Shelby County and the needs we have here.
Okay. I'm good on that. I'm good on that. You know what? You're listening to Funky Politics. We'll be right back with our very good friend, Dr. Cedric Gray, the Director of Education for Shelby County Government. Right here on Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
We got the funk, funky politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Riffin' on Jazz.
I'm Howard Robertson, one of your hosts for Riffin' on Jazz. Riffin' is your weekly visit with friends where we dive all in to that classic African-American art form called jazz every week on your favorite broadcast and podcast platforms.
Riffin' on Jazz on the KUDZUKIAN Network. KUDZUKIAN! Funky politics.
We're back right here on Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network, DC Doc and Tosha, and we have got in the studio the one and only Dr. Cedric Gray, Director of Education for Shelby County Government. Tasha, you got that smile on your face.
I got something on my mind.
You got a whopper for
I want to say something.
Doc, you got your helmet on over there.
Look, let me put it on because I see it coming.
Boy,
I see it coming.
I really just want to, you came up through this system, so you know the city and the system, you know some things. Well, if you had a magic wand, you'd wave it.
He has one already. You know, he gets the people together. He's got magic wand.
What would you do in this new role with this magic wand that could make anything happen to make schools better for children in Shelby County?
Unfortunately, there's no one thing. Out of all of my travels and training educators to do this work, I think we got to help principals become really strong instructional leaders. Now, this is just me talking. I'm the educator, right? I'm just talking as an educator. There are social things and political things and financial things that are out there that other people can talk a little bit about. What I can talk about is we have to have buildings that are supported by principals who feel empowered and are knowledgeable about instruction. Back in the day, even when I was a principal, we could walk the hall with a paddle in our waistband.
We just keep it on.
Right.
Yeah, I
remember
did
those days.
I did that. Statute of limitations has run out.
Yep, you good. You good, Doc.
So, but now with accountability where it is and test scores and all of this other stuff, you know, we've got to have principals who know education in the classroom back and forth. And we have to support them in that way. And then the second piece of that is we got to provide the professional development for our teachers. They need it. I have, Ms. Carpenter said something earlier that I thought was profound. I had met a parent who doesn't want what's best for their child. Yeah. That's right. And I have not met a teacher that doesn't want what's best for their students. I don't care what happens. The teachers go into classrooms every day and they want to do what's right by their kids.
That's good to hear, Dr. Gray.
I'm just telling you.
I feel like people just beat up on teachers.
They do.
They just show up for a check and don't care what happened to these children.
You know, and so I'm not saying that some of that don't happen.
Okay.
What I'm saying is they don't want that to happen. When I was a teacher, I taught at Douglas. My first year, I came face to face with a young man named Justin. I'm new. He and I bumped heads constantly. And now that I can reflect and look back, there are two things I didn't have. I didn't know how to teach what he needed, what he needed. And I didn't know what Justin was going through.
Right.
So if a teacher has provided those kinds of things, you train them right so they can teach the students and then provide them with an effective, supportive principal. They can build that building and let the principal do the job.
And we're not getting that right now, apparently. And I'm not going to say across the board, but I think even if we had to we hopscotch around, this school here, that may have one, this school has a strong leader, this, you know, and apparently we're not because we have so many indicators, right, Tasha? That is pointing to the
since
fact
you
that
asked.
Yeah, since I asked.
Absolutely no, we do not.
Okay.
But you look at a system, though, that has the numbers of impoverished children like this system does. And it's good to see that Shelby County, Tennessee, who is the source of funding, is stepping up. How do you start to institute the product that's going to take these kids to a different level so that these 40% kids, and I'm saying 40% because that's Memphis and Shelby County, these 40% of kids that are living in in poverty, real poverty, unqualified poverty, don't just grow up to be poor adults. How are we going to use education to break that chain? You got the people talking. That's good. How are we going to move? What's the next step we're going to move in the next direction we're going to move in? Because I see that as something that a person that has command of all the districts has to do, which would be you. Yeah.
Well, that is the hardest question to answer in a short time period, because I say it's not just one thing, but I think, quite frankly, I think grown folk had to put their agendas to the side and start to focus on what's really important in our community. Right. And it is our school-age citizens. We have way too many grown folk who have this agenda that they're driving that gets in the way of the education of our young people.
Right. Well, let me ask, okay, so you got the grown-ups have to grow up.
I like that.
But there's another institution out there.
Okay.
The private sector.
Mm-hmm.
These are employers.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
The kid that's at some school in the inner city that's supposed to be low performing and blah, 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 is going to end up probably could end up being your hospital administrator or president at Methodist Hospital, or your corporate exec at Service Master or something like that. How do we ensure that that's an opportunity that's real for them? How do we get the corporate sector involved in trying to invest in these kids now as a potential workforce executive, as opposed to just going out looking for the best and brightest in some other city?
Well, let me tell you, an idea we did in Jackson was we incorporated, we had an organization called Alignment Jackson. We borrowed this idea from Alignment Nashville. Okay. And so it was a collaboration between the United Way of the greater Jackson area, the city itself, and the school system. All right. So we began to create high school academies. This is so powerful. This is the way it worked, right? So we went to the Nissan plant in Canton, had to sit down with the folk there. HR director was in there, and I said to the HR director, I said, okay, how do you orient your folk? I mean, when you bring them on board, how long? Well, it's a 12-week program. I said, okay. And so after 12 weeks, what happens? Well, they're on probation for 6 months. I said, what's your retention? She said, about one every 2. So we keep a little bit, and then we lose some. I said, what if you took, instead of 12 weeks, what if you put 6 weeks of that orientation in our high school and let us weave it into curriculum, math, science, social studies, and, whatever is associated with running the Nissan plant. Right. And then so when they leave the high school, they could have an associate's degree, certification. That's right. And then you got ready-made employees that can do everything from stand on the assembly line to be the president and CEO of that company, right? If you've engaged them early enough as high school. So, I mean, that's an idea that I think is really workable.
You're listening to Funky Politics, powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Go ahead.
One of the things that's important, you talked a little bit about earlier, is about the policy universe. So I just left Nashville, drove like crazy to get here. Always tend to be a little frustrated. Again, take that magic wand you have and think about what policies could make your work and the work with these 7, 8 superintendents feasible to really make a difference for kids.
Okay, so one thing that we desperately need is a review of the basic education BEP formula.
We need some more money.
You got to have some money. You got to have some money. There's no doubt about it. I mean, everybody knows that. I mean, even those who deny it can't deny that it's going to cost more to teach little Cedric in Binghamton, which is where I'm from, to someone who is more affluent in another area. So I think that we have to take, if I were going to waive that policy one, that's what it would be, is to take a deep dive look into that. I think the other part really relates to creating additional pathways for graduation from high school. That's aside from just traditional one, right? And so that includes what we talked about, right? So the attainment of certifications, the apprenticeships and internships that can be born out of that, because little Cedric he was going to graduate from high school, but he still wasn't interested in college. He would rather, because his dad was this and his dad was, he would rather follow in his dad's footsteps and quite frankly become the CEO of an HVAC company in the city of Memphis, right? Which means
well, you know, Dr. Gray, you said something here that made a little sense to me, and I want to know, and I think Ms. Carpenter, we kind of played around with the fact she said that people these teachers and administrators need to understand that they work for the parent. Basically, that child is there. If he wasn't or she wasn't there, Tom Tucker, nobody else would be getting paid, right? Have we tried to, and I think I've heard this somewhere before, have we tried almost like an opportunity zone? Let's say we know that this sector of schools is underperforming, right? Have we tried saying we're going to throw a lot of resources at this, and we're going to set up and say, hey, look, zone 3, we're going to pay every teacher there and more than we pay anybody else in the district, and we're going to require a lot more of the parents and students in terms of, and I'm thinking maybe a little bit of eyes on, a little bit more of ASD, but we're going to require a lot more of the parents. We're going to take about 200 days of instruction versus a 102 now, or whatever the number is. Have we tried anything like that? Would that be too radical to say that maybe even doubling Tosha's salary as a teacher? But I need you to stay here with me. I need you to help me bring this neighborhood up. And the only way I'm gonna be able to get that to happen is that you stay with me for at least, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 years, maybe 10 years, at least through a generation.
No, quite frankly, it's not radical. I think that, I mean, it is in the concept that it may not exist in this area now, but it exists other places in the country. National Board Certified Teachers receive additional funding because they become nationally board certified, right? So it's a process you go through, you become an expert teacher, right? What I have seen in a couple of places is you fill a school full of these national board certified teachers and you pay them the stipend that they receive, but above that, and I've seen as much as an additional $25,000.
Yes.
75% of the school is nationally board certified teachers. Now, these are expert teachers, right? And so they drive this instructional agenda to such a space that the students who come in can't fail because they're being taught by master's teachers. And then this might be radical. Then you tie that to the performance. Right. So if you bring your child up, you grow that child from in 1 year, and if you provide 2 years worth of growth in 1 year, then you get an additional bonus.
Yes.
What's wrong with that?
We do that in corporate America every day.
Absolutely.
And so we got to take some of those. We got to adopt some strategies, I think, Tosha, that says, look, we've tried all this other junk. It's failed us.
Well, I just want to say now you got to get those national board certified teachers from somewhere.
Well,
so now I will promise you that we might have a shortage of a sort here in the county of Shelby.
Well, guess what? I'm going to start recruiting just like I recruit police officers in Little Rock. I recruit them in Dallas. Hey, look, I'll recruit you into Memphis. We're going to pay you $100,000 to come as a national board certified teacher to do whatever that number is, that magical number is. Where there's a will, there's a way.
Well, and doesn't necessarily have to be national board certified. It could be certified in some way, in some aspect, right? Some master teacher program.
Yes.
Master teacher program. I think back in the day it may have been something akin to career ladder, but master teacher program that says you've passed the test, you've made the grade, you are in this master teacher slot. We want to send you to a school where 10 other are there just like you, that the school has been historically low performing. I want you to make that school performing. In 3 years, if you get that school performing, then you get the $100,000. And guess what? Then you need to maintain that, right? So just not there.
That's right.
And while they're there, in making this certification, we continue to provide the same training for other teachers. After a while, we can multiply this thing.
But the opposite is what happens. So our best and our brightest, our national board certified quality teachers, you know where they go?
Where they go?
They get to go to the optional schools with the best kids and the best classes.
Well, I guess.
And coast on out to retirement.
But here's another thought.
They don't get sent to the place where they're most needed.
Looking at the private sector once again, because you got to have that partnership. How hard is it to get people from the private sector to come and work on an adjunct level in our system? In other words,
we might need that policy magic wand for that. Well, people vested in
magic wand.
And we've talked about this on another program. I think you're going somewhere.
Yeah,
with that.
I mean, who's going to teach you science better than a doctor? Who's going to teach you, home ec better than a chef? Who's going to teach you social studies better than
maybe a PhD over at the university? He's got office hours.
who's going to teach you law better than a lawyer? Who's going to teach you English better than an English professor or someone who deals with that on a regular basis? So, it's just, and they don't have to work and be employed full time. No. Just give enough and then get the credit from their company or get paid to do it. Because after all, what you're doing is you're sowing the seeds of education into your future workforce. And what a better way to do that than actually being on the ground? Then we can stop asking people in corporate America, go to a school, check out a child, become a mentor, because now you're there every day.
Yeah. They see a doctor. Mm-hmm. They see someone. And it's almost like adopting a college level environment to a K through 12 situation, right?
Right.
And we've talked about this before in the program, and I think it has merit. I mean, I think right now we have got to do something that's completely radical that makes everybody say, what the hell are they doing? That's the craziest idea. And sometimes crazy works. Doesn't it, Tosha?
Sometimes it does. Again.
It just might work. But
you don't need that policy one. He don't need to wear that policy
Well, we're
one.
definitely not going to get out 40% poverty doing what we're doing now.
Because that's not working.
That's just a slow boat to hell.
Doc, look, Dr. Gray, I know you got some hard stops. We've enjoyed you being here with us. It's good to know that we got a young brother by the name of Dr. Cedric Gray, who's the director, the newly appointed director of education for Shelby County government right here in Memphis and Shelby County. Man, will you come back and see us again?
Absolutely.
A bridge builder.
A Nobel Peace Prize candidate.
A highway, super highway constructor.
I am asking that if you know of any. So I'm still we're building
educational superhighway.
We're building the plane as we flying it, right?
Yeah.
And so if you know of spots that I could benefit being in, then let me know because we're still taking in lots of ideas and lots of. We're formatting this thing, right? So we're doing a good job, I think, of framing it around the vision of Mayor Lee Harris, but we're still painting the canvas. And so we need
I'll say this: Tosha and I, we're not only going to submit your name along with the president's name again for the Nobel Peace Prize for next year. We're going to make sure this thing gets off the ground this time, Doc. Right? Doc's
you didn't say me. You said Tosha and I.
Well, no, Doc's our lawyer for this. Whatever.
Y'all got me sweating. I'm hot.
Thanks a lot for being with us here on Funky Politics.
There you go.
Powered by the KUDZUKIAN Network.
We got the funk. Funky Politics on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
Hey, I'm Williams Brack, co-host of Grind Set. The insight you gain from us and our guests will motivate you to take the leap into entrepreneurship. Make sure to check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TuneIn, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast provider.
Grind Set on the KUDZUKIAN Network.
KUDZUKIAN.